What's up guys, Ben here and bringing you another video today. We're going to talk a little bit about Atlanta FaZe season review, off-season preview for this team following Call of Duty champs. A season of many seconds, how'd their journey go down, what they should do in the off-season if they want to go back to lifting the trophy at the end of the season. Let's dive in. So look, 2021 was a great season for Atlanta FaZe. They were dominant, they won a couple of events, lost a couple of events, but they were in the grand finals like every event to be honest. Other than Major 5 in which they got Nick Classicked. And at the end of the season, when it all came down to them in Toronto, they were the team, Game 8, Apocalypse, Hardpoint, that they clutched up and lifted the Call of Duty Champs trophy. For many of those players, that was their second ring. For MC, that was his first ring. And many expected 2022 could be another season where FaZe would dominate. And they ran it back with the same roster, right? Abizi, Simp, Celium, and ARCITYS. You got Crowder and RJ holding down the major coaching positions. You obviously got Easy Mac as your analyst. And then you've got Tupac Thug Lord, aka John, aka the #1 Braves fan in the world, as your S&D coach. And they start off the season strong. Obviously, Kickoff Classic, they got rounded 1, but them and Optic and a few other teams were in kind of that weird boat where, you know, you didn't get to play on first day, first new game, and it is what it is. But they start off well at Major 1 qualifiers, going 5-0, only dropping 5 maps total. They beat Boston, Thieves, Minnesota, New York, and Paris on their way to getting the #1 seed going into the event in Dallas. And from there, it was a runner-up finish for Atlanta FaZe. They took care of business against Boston like they did most of the season. They had a tough reverse sweep loss against Optic Texas. They were up 2-0 in that series and got come back on. I think if they had won that series, they may likely have won the event. It is what it is. They beat Thieves in a tough game 5 after that. In loser semis, they took care of business in 3 maps against Toronto, a team that was really struggling to win respawns at this event. They took care of London in 4 maps, London coming off of a really good run through the winners bracket, and FaZe found themselves in a grand final, familiar territory against Optic Texas. I think the Gavitu control ended up being sort of the swing in the middle of this series. Optic Texas, in front of their home crowd, do go ahead and win the event in 7 maps. And for Atlanta FaZe, not a bad start to the season. You would have liked to have won to get that momentum, but second is not too bad. And you know that you're going to be in the mix for championships all season, so it's something to build on. So we go into the Major 2 qualifiers, and not a 4-1 for FaZe or a 5-0. They do go 3-2, but they do qualify for winners. Their losses against Optic Texas, but I believe that was with Pristini subbing in when Simp was sick. And they did lose a game 5 to Seattle, but they beat Toronto, London, and Florida to go ahead and qualify for winners at the event in Minnesota. And a theme for the year for Atlanta FaZe at this Minnesota event, second best team at like legitimately every tournament this year. They take care of new business against New York on the first day of the event. They face off against Seattle, and it's an absolute grueling of a series on Saturday, but they do go ahead and win and advance to winners finals. Where Atlanta FaZe face off against surprising top 3 team Boston at this event, and FaZe take care of business. And you're thinking, well, this looks like an easy dub for FaZe. A lot of top teams are out. At this point, it was like Florida, LAG, them, and Boston. You're like, FaZe got to win this, right? Well, wrong, because LAG continued this crazy losers run. They beat Boston losers finals, winning like 9 S&Ds in a row. And they face off again against Atlanta FaZe, and they're too strong in the searches, too strong in the controls. And once again for Atlanta FaZe, second best team, and you lose in 7. And LAG continue the improbable run and win the event. And you think, okay, maybe Pro-Am will be FaZe's chance. And they get a good start, right? They drop 2 maps in Group A, one against Seattle, one against Toronto, but they 3-0 take that group at the top seed and advance to the bracket, in which unfortunately had to face off against Optic Texas round 1. And once again, they go up 2-0 against Optic Texas. Is looking good, but the Texas boys get the reverse sweep, and FaZe is surprising top 8 finish at this event. Can't get it done against Optic Texas, and New York would be your ultimate winners of this event. FaZe basically has champs kind of locked in at this point with all of these seconds. So it's about building towards champs at this point because you know your spot's locked in. And another 3-2 split for FaZe online. They lose to Minnesota and Optic. They get victories against Boston, LAG, and New York to go ahead and lock in the 5th seed going to the event in Toronto. And guys, a recurring theme for FaZe throughout this season, they get to the grand final and they can't get it done. They beat Toronto, the home team, on day 1 with a lot of energy in the building. They 3-0 Thieves in like 20 minutes. Their last victory against Thieves this season. And then they lose to Seattle in a game 5. Seattle clutch up in a bunch of respawns in this series, and FaZe get knocked down to losers finals, where they face off against Toronto again. It's a real close game 5er. Toronto's really giving them a hard time throughout this series, but FaZe clutch up on game 5 and advance to the grand finals. And it's a really good series against Seattle. I think Seattle's early lead in this series really helped them get the win here. Pred goes nuts. Mac is playing out of his mind. You get a couple clutches from Lamar, and Seattle get it done in that final hard point and win an 8. And for FaZe, your third second of the year, you're coming so close to winning these finals, but not able to get it done, and Seattle ends up lifting the trophy in Toronto. Another 3-2 split for FaZe to close out the online portion of the season. At this point, they've locked in the number 1 seed for champs. They lose to London and LAG. The LAG one, I think, being the most surprising of the two, because London was playing pretty good online. Thieves, Seattle, and Toronto are no business for FaZe though, and they get those W's. And another 5th seed going into an event for FaZe. I don't think at this point the seeding really matters to them. Again, they've got the number 1 seed locked in for champs. It's about getting practice for that event. It's a bit of an interesting ride for them at this event. They lose a surprising series against LA Thieves 3-1. I mean, Thieves were playing pretty good prior to this, but I would have had FaZe probably favored in this series. And for FaZe to not force to the game 5 and get really outclassed in the respawns was definitely surprising for me. So FaZe got to make the losers run if they want to stick ahead in this tournament. They get against Paris in loser round 1, and it's a pretty close series. As is a recurring theme with Paris, they really struggle to get it done in game 5, and FaZe advanced a nail biter. They face off against LAG in the next round. It's not really close in terms of the maps, and FaZe 3-0 smoked them. FaZe keep it rolling with a 3-1 victory against Florida, a team that really didn't give them a lot of trouble this season and end their season as well. And then FaZe get a chance for redemption against an Optic Texas team that they've struggled to beat all season. A BZ goes massive in the respawns in this series, and FaZe get it done in 4 and advance to losers finals. But once again, and sort of the story at the end of the season for FaZe, they really struggle against Thieves once we get towards champ season, and Thieves look too good in the respawns in this series and take it in 4 and advance to the grand finals against New York. So for FaZe, your major second, third, just not enough to get it done in these majors, even though you're probably the second best team pretty much at all of these events so far this season. So you gotta think, right, Vanguard, like a different team has won an event each season. Maybe this is FaZe's chance to win an event, but they just can't pull it off. For FaZe, their first matchups against New York, and it goes into a nail biter game 5 all the way to the end, and FaZe clutch up. I mean, all of the series that they won a champs are really close. They play a nail biter against Seattle, and honestly, like, Seattle really struggled with FaZe on sort of mid control on Tuscan, and FaZe took advantage of that, especially through in game 5 when Simp was making these flanks through middle map and making plays, especially in the round 11, and FaZe get it done in a nail biter advance to winners finals, where they face off against LA Thieves. And it's the same story against for Thieves. Like, they're just not able to really catch up with them in the respawns, and while FaZe kind of prolong the series, they do lose in 4 and are unable to advance on the winner's side to grand finals, where they end up facing against Seattle. And it's sort of a repeat from their earlier series at this event. Seattle really struggled with Tuscan against this strong FaZe team on that map, and FaZe win in 4 and advance to the grand finals. And I mean, this was an interesting final. Thieves went off to a huge lead early on. It looked like they were about to 5-0 clean sweep FaZe. Then FaZe won 2 maps and almost had a chance at a 3rd map win on a Tuscan S&D. And I thought really if FaZe had won that map, they had a pretty good shot at the last 2. All momentum would have been on their side, but Thieves were too icy at the end after dropping a couple of maps, and they get it done in 7, and Thieves are your champs at the end of the season. For Atlanta FaZe, you were pretty much the second best team all season. And like, it's kind of crazy because you take a look at their sort of overall map record stats, and these guys were pretty good all season, right? We've talked about in a bunch of these videos, like everyone's 500. FaZe wasn't 500. They were definitely in a class above most of the season. Yes, they had their ups and downs at points where they were not good at S&D, not good at control, but at the end of the day, they were sitting around a 55% and above win record in most game modes, and they probably finished as the best control team at the end of the season. Really, maybe their only sort of weak map, if we want to talk weak maps, was like Berlin Hardpoint. They couldn't figure out all season, and definitely at the end of the season, it would have been nice to have that in your bag against a team like LA Thieves that was very good at Berlin Hardpoint. That Tuscan control record's kind of wild, 19-7, and it's only really bested by how good Optic Texas played on that map for 3/4 of the season. And just in general, like, no one really wanted to play them on Bocage or Gava 2 Hardpoint. These guys became very good at those maps. They played a lot of Tuscan as well, and I know much was heralded about their P1, P5 thing, but they ended up actually having a pretty good record at Tuscan at the end of the season. And if we look at kind of the last 2 parts of the season, Major 4/Stage 4 and champs, I think what kind of really didn't help out this FaZe team is they weren't particularly dominant at Hardpoint at champs, and I think that really made them struggle against a team like LA Thieves. They were probably the best respawn team at the game at that event. I think the S&D being 500 also didn't help. This has normally been a strong S&D team. We saw how dominant they were in the Modern Warfare season, how good they were last year in Cold War, but down the stretch in S&D, it didn't seem like they were always on the same page, and it was very much feast and famine. They're like one go-to map they were very good at the end of the season was Berlin S&D, but outside of that. Like, they didn't really play Desert Siege much at the end of the season, even though their win record on it was very good, which makes me think that they really struggled on that map down the stretch. But all the other game modes were basically like kind of 50-50 in them on S&D. Control, they were good. 12-5 to end the season. Your last 17 is pretty good, but that 3-7 in a hardpoint kind of offsets some of that strength that you had at champs on Control. And for FaZe, again, they were a solid team, but second best to an LA Thieves team that really dominated the meta at the end of the season when we went to 3 ARs and had the best of them on hardpoint. And we take a look at overall stats. Obviously, Pristini subbed in for them for a series and, mixed results. Again, that was against Optic. But across the board, some interesting things to note, I think, taking a look at these stats. One is obviously Cell had an insane season. MVP 1.22 is crazy. I think a lot to expect that MC is going to continue to play this well. I mean, he's probably the hardest kill in the league. Simp, obviously not as good of a season as we've seen him in the past, but a 105 with a sub is nothing to sneeze at. He played very well, especially after how slow he started the season. I think from an overall slaying perspective, we have to critique two players in this team. aBeZy and Alec, aka ARCITYS, definitely did not have as good a seasons as we've seen in the past for them. I think probably I would put more so in aBeZy definitely being the X factor than Alec. Like, Alec's going to always be in a position where it's hard to get kills because his team, if they're playing well, are just getting all of the trades in front of him. But for aBeZy, a 0.97, a lot of aggressive subs definitely did not have their best game in this one. And aBeZy's been on record that this wasn't a comfortable game for him. And I think if he was more comfortable, maybe they win a chip or two. But hopefully he sort of rebounds in a more structured game because it seemed like he wasn't comfortable in this one. I think an interesting thing to note, kind of one final thoughts on the KD, and as we take a look at a hardpoint specific KDs for this team, like, yes, MC played disgusting, but these guys from individual slaying were definitely up and down this game mode. But how good they were, I think, speaks to their discipline and how well structured this team is. In a year where their slaying wasn't the best overall individually for a couple of their players, they were still in the mix most of the season. So, like, I think with a couple better individual performances, they didn't really have an event where all 4 players went off at the same time. They probably walk away with an event win or 2 instead of a bunch of second places. And that really gets to the contract situation. These guys were all re-signed at the offseason last year. There's really no path to like improve this team outside of like Hail Mary plays. Like, I don't know, like what if Shotzzy decided to come to this team and he dropped Alec for Shotzzy? Yeah, that sounds crazy. Yeah, they would get better. But would that move happen? Probably not. I don't see Shotzzy leaving Optic. Could you say do Pred for Alec? Yeah, I could see it. Would it make the team better? Probably. Would they do it? Probably not, because Pred probably cost $1 million to buy out and Seattle's not going to get rid of him. So I think likely this team's going to run it back. There's not really moves that they can make to get better. To me, probably actually the biggest question mark based on sort of recent chatter is around the position of Crowder as a head coach. I know y'all, by the time this video will come out, is sort of seeing the tactical rep tweets about Crowder changing his bio. I've known Chris for a long time. I've kind of also talked to a lot of the coaches around the league this season. And I think this game is definitely like taking years off the lives of some of those coaches, especially for the players as well. And I think Chris has sort of not made his decision if he wants to come back or not. I think Chris is someone who definitely wants to go down a content creation path, but he's in an interesting situation with FaZe where I don't think there's an expectation from either the professional staff of the team or the players where he needs to coach 100% of the time. So my expectation for Chris is he'll remain the head coach, but a little bit more of a part-time capacity than last couple of seasons so he can pursue that content creation path. Because look, they've got RJ, they've got Tupac to go ahead and cover them from a coaching perspective. What Chris brings, I think, from value for this team is demand management, right? RJ's like a smart Call of Duty mind, more so than you guys probably know, and can help set up the tactics in the system well. But what Chris has, I think, is his ability to really bring the best out of these players in one-on-one conversations and team meetings. And it doesn't really require Crowder to coach full time. He can be there part of the time to do that, pull to events, etc. So I think overall, I expect them to run it back with this package and see if they can grab a chip again. I mean, bro, this team, the core of this team, if you think about it, and it's wild, ARCITYS, Simp, and aBeZy, in some combination of this group, have made 4 of the last 4 Call of Duty Champs finals. It's crazy to think about. And they've got 2 rings out of the 4 to take, which is not too bad. But I'm sure for Simp and aBeZy and for MC, they've been in all 3 of the CDL Champs finals, and they only have 1 victory of the 3. I'm sure they want to try and make that 2 out of 2 going in the next season. And this team's got a very good shot to do it if they stick together. Let me know what you guys think of this video, right? Do you think that Atlanta FaZe should make any changes? Do you think that they should try and swing for the fence for someone like Shotzzy? Do you think that Crowder should come back? If Crowder does end up retiring as coach, what do you think they should do? Do you think they should promote RJ, bring in another coach? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you liked the video, smash that like button. And as always, would appreciate you subscribing to my channel. We'll be pumping out plenty of content over the next few weeks, so be on the lookout for that as Roster Mania begins to heat up. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.